Hello! Today we're going to review order of operations and solve a few equations with multiple expressions. Let's get started. So you might remember learning a mnemonic, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Or you might have learned an acronym, PEMDAS. Either is going to help you remember your order of operations when you're solving equations with multiple expressions. So I'm going to write out, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. And we're going to look at the first letter of each word of this mnemonic. So if we write out the first letter of each word, we have P, E, M, D, A, and lastly S. So, as you can see, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally gives you the acronym PEMDAS. So now let's review what each of those letters stands for. So the P in PEMDAS stands for parentheses. The E stands for exponents. M stands for multiplication. D stands for division. A stands for addition. And lastly, S stands for subtraction. So this means that whenever you see an equation, the first thing that you're going to look for is parentheses. If there are any parentheses in the equation, you'll want to solve what's inside those parentheses first. Next, you look for any exponents. If there are any exponents in the equation, you solve those. Next, we have multiplication and division, and this gets a little bit more complicated. It should be multiplication or division, and the way that you determine which one you're going to solve first depends on which comes first in the equation when you're reading it from left to right. Just like you would read a book, you're reading the equation from left to right, and whichever comes first, division or multiplication, that's what you're going to solve. So you need to remember that it can be either multiplication or division, depending on which comes first from left to right. Next, we have addition and subtraction, which have the same exact rule. You need to remember that addition and subtraction also may be subtraction then addition, and it depends on which comes first in the equation when you're reading it from left to right. All right, let's look at some equations and put the PEMDAS to use. So let's consider the equation 7 plus 3x when x equals 4. So, as we learned in some other lessons, 3x means 3 multiplied by x. There are multiple different ways to write this, and we know that 3, when any number is next to a variable, it means it's being multiplied. So we no longer write the times symbol because it looks much too similar to our variable x. So some other ways you can write this are with a dot, with an asterisk, or parentheses. So I'll show you that as we substitute in 4 for x. We can now write this equation as 7 plus 3 times x. Now whenever a number is directly next to a parentheses, you are multiplying that number by what's inside the parentheses. In this case, we're just multiplying a number by another number. You can also write this as 7 plus 3 times with a dot 4. That means multiplied as well. And lastly, you can write it as 3 and an asterisk for the multiplication symbol times 4. So now let's solve this equation. Based on our order of operations, we'll look for any parentheses, and there are no parentheses in this equation. So next we look for exponents, and again, no exponents in the equation. Next, we'll look for multiplication or division. In this equation, all we have is multiplication. So we don't need to remember or worry about the left to right rule because there's only one of the two. So first we'll solve for the multiplication. So this expression stays exactly the same. We'll have 7 plus, and then we'll solve for 3 multiplied by 4, which is 12. Now we move to addition or subtraction. We don't have any subtraction, so again, we don't need to worry about that left to right rule. All we have is addition. So we'll solve the addition, 7 plus 12, which equals 19. Now, a common wrong answer for this equation is 40, and I'll show you how you can get a wrong answer. So, if you don't follow the order of operations. So if we have the same equation, 3 times 4, 7 plus 3 times 4, and we don't remember the order of operations and we just solve left to right, we get 7 plus 3, which is 10, and then 10 times 4 is 40, which is a wrong answer. So you can see how order of operations is extremely important because you could get an answer that's completely different than the right answer if you don't follow PEMDAS. So next, let's solve an equation that's a little bit more complicated. So we're going to consider the equation 20 minus 2 times 3 plus 5. So again, go back to your PEMDAS. Parentheses. There are no parentheses in this equation. Exponents. No exponents. Multiplication or division, whichever comes first, left to right. So we'll look for any multiplication or division signs. I only see a multiplication sign, so we'll solve that first. So this expression stays the same, and so does this. And we get 20 minus plus 5, and 2 multiplied by 3 is 6. So this is our new equation. Now, the next thing in PEMDAS is addition or subtraction, whichever comes first, left to right. So we have a subtraction symbol, and we also have an addition symbol. So even though addition comes first in PEMDAS, we need to remember that left to right takes precedence. We need to look left to right when solving addition or subtraction. So we will solve the subtraction first because that symbol comes before the addition symbol. So 20 minus 6 is 14. And then we carry down the 5, and 14 plus 5 is 19, which is the correct answer. Now again, if you don't remember your order of operations, which are extremely important, you can get a completely wrong answer. So let's take this equation that we have here, 20 minus 6 plus 5, and if we just looked at PEMDAS, addition is first and subtraction is second. So if we solved addition first, we would be wrong because we also need to remember left to right is extremely important when solving addition or subtraction. So if we solved addition first, we would get 11, and then carry down the 20 minus 11 is 9, which is a wrong answer compared to the right answer of 19. So as you can see, the left to right rule is extremely important, and you can get a completely wrong answer if you forget that left to right needs to be considered when looking at multiplication or division and addition or subtraction.